What is up, folks? My name is Justin Khanna. This is episode 9 of season 2 of The Bear. This is called Omelette. And if we think about omelets in The Bear, is there really any more viral dish in 2023 than the omelet from this episode? I mean, fun fact, that's why chef coats actually do have 2 sets of buttons that are reversible. And it's this idea that you can go out into the dining room to talk to guests and cover up all of the, messes.
I am excited.
Well, thanks, Dad. Means a lot.
I know you can put a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah, well, I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with you, don't own a car, and for dinner the other night, I had a left Twix, so I think pressure's our friend here.
I mean, underrated part of the scene to have somebody that supportive in your life. It's kind of awesome. Everybody's different in personal preferences. I certainly had a season and jobs that I worked where I wore my chef coat to work as well. I get that she's wearing like a winter coat over it. You can obviously still see the bottom of the chef coat coming out of this, but it was just this feeling that I wanted there to be a difference between like street clothes and work clothes. But I personally like moved and shifted into like my chef coat either stays at work if I had a locker at work, or I would keep it in like my backpack, or in Sydney's case here, a tote bag. I don't exactly know what we would call this way of formatting a menu, but it's almost like this distillation down to the most practical version or word of each of these dishes. So the way that the expediter would literally call it out to the chef de partie. So like, pick up 6 T-bone, you're out on 4 cannoli, pick up 3 focaccia. And if it's not that, it's almost like the front of house name of the presentation. So like, this is our welcome broth, this is our 7 fishes presentation. And I want to call it out because it is different from the menus that will just use like a single ingredient to talk about that dish. So certain restaurants, they will just have the word carrots or beet or pistachio as the name of the dish. This is different than that. This is like, this is our focaccia, this is our cannoli, this is our bolognese. It doesn't say that technically, but it is actually a different format and it has a different kind of like air to it. Because we can take it to like the nth degree, most descriptive menu you've ever seen at a restaurant, right? Like we can take the cannoli dish, for example, that they were talking about last episode. This can be the Bear's cannoli, and then underneath it, it says, our crispy Parmesan tuile stuffed with mortadella mousse and toasted crushed pistachios. As you have that menu in front of you, or if you're researching online or looking on Instagram or whatever, and you're looking at that dish description, you haven't had the dish yet, but you're starting to get some expectations buzzing around in your head. And then again, for better or for worse, when you go and sit down and you actually get that cannoli presented to you, you are bringing those expectations into that dining experience, into that first bite. And so to almost mitigate that, chefs got to this place of like listing out the sets like we saw in one of the earlier episodes as they were brainstorming new dishes. And so instead of that long dish description for the cannoli, you might actually see Parmesan / mortadella / pistachio. And then that's the name of the dish. Even then you start to think, okay, is it like a puck of mortadella? Is it seared? How is it its own course? How is the Parmesan? Is it grated over the top? And so I'm not saying that there's one right or wrong way to present your menu. I just think that there is one version of this dish, maybe with a cannoli in particular, where you say cannoli, you're looking at it, it's like the 4th dish on the menu, you're like, whoa, that's really weird that it's that place in the menu. I thought cannoli was normally a dessert, and then you get it and it looks like a cannoli, but then it's actually savory. The punchline being chefs and restaurants are always trying to play with expectations, because I find personally that expectations to be almost like this like seasoning sauce that comes with an experience, where if I just like, everybody's been telling me this place is going to be like the best meal of my life, I'm like dousing the experience with expectation sauce. And like, no matter how good the experience might actually be, it's like the expectations just like overpower whatever it is that I would have at that restaurant. And then you can actually flip it the other way. If I happen to like stumble into a place and I didn't happen to know where it was, or if someone just invited me to come last minute because their friend canceled on them, and I have 0 expectations heading into the experience, there's no expectation sauce on my experience, so to speak, and then the restaurant is just firing and they're just like crushing it and they blow it away from an experience perspective, and I didn't come in with any expectations and it's able to just surpass the little to no expectations that I had, sometimes that can be more memorable and I'm more likely to talk about it. As always, I'm super happy to have conversations with you folks on stuff like this down low in the comments. So if you have thoughts, please let me know. Okay, I can't say I've seen the supplemental stickers that go on the photos of the folks, or the quotes, or the images that you post on your taped down pass. For those that don't know, the countertops that get used as passes in Thomas Keller's kitchens are either marble topped or they're stainless steel. If you do the math on the 9 courses just on the chef's tasting menu, not even covering desserts or supplements or anything like that, times the like over 100 guests in a dinner service, there's thousands of plates that are coming across that pass in an evening. Not to mention the fact that a lot of the stuff that's being used is like porcelain or fine china. And so to both cut down on breakage as well as the noise, they put linens down on the pass. It's usually like a white tablecloth. But if you were to just put that linen down, it would shift and move around. And so to fix that, they actually use the green tape that we, the chefs, use for our labels for our deli containers and stuff like that to tape down the pass. It is a daily activity. It's done almost like a ritual, usually by the expediter every single day at those restaurants. Once the pass is taped down, now there's a couple of other information sheets that are helpful to have throughout the service. The first like kind of no-duh thing is actually having the menu posted on the pass. And the reason that's so important at Thomas Keller restaurants is because for all intents and purposes, the menu changes every single day. That's less important on the chef side, but really important when we're talking about food runners and front of house people coming up to the pass and they're just thinking about like what dish is coming up next because they just had the fish and then they're going on to shellfish. And then you can combine it with other practical sheets like the out of place matrix. This includes all of the allergy and dietary restriction modifications that are going to be made throughout the night. I teach this in my program called Total Station Domination. And at some point throughout the daily routine, again, of like taping down the pass, taping the menus down to the pass, you can see the like perfect 90-degree angles that they have here. It might have been a newspaper article, it might have been a clipping from a magazine, but something else like a picture got pasted down onto the pass. And then all of a sudden that transformed and grew and evolved into every single day, the front of house or the expediter, more importantly, would decide on a quote with an image of a person, and then that would get taped down to the pass. And again, very similar to like keeping cookbooks from big name chefs in your office or having the images on the wall of chefs that you respect in the hallway of your restaurant. It's almost like this spirit animal that you keep on the pass where you're trying to channel the energy of someone or something. And for Sydney, this makes total sense. Coach K has been an inspiration for her this entire season, and so having him taped down on her pass absolutely makes sense. It's an environmental curation thing because you're taking the time to make sure you have the extra few minutes to make this organization step happen, and then you're also making sure that it's not just like paper strewn about. It's the opposite of like, I can't remember what's on the menu tonight, or like there's this weird purveyor invoice that's on the pass. It's like everything's clean, it's ready to go, bring on the service.
Are you good?
I mean, ask me later. You?
I feel like I want to pause and talk about Friends and Family just like as a concept because I've been a part of Friends and Family nights, both on the like you come and check out the restaurant, like on the guest side, as well as on the line cook side. And I guess I have some qualms, I have some concerns, and I have some ways that I think it could be made better. What we've seen so far in preparation for this restaurant's Friends and Family is that it's been incredibly like charged from a like, oh my goodness, this person is coming, or hey, can I invite so-and-so? And for someone like Carmen, for up until this point, everybody has been like, when are you going to have your own restaurant? They're hyping him up. They're like, you have all this experience. We know you have the chops to make this happen. When is it going to be time? You have Sydney with like the doubters in her life, and it's great to see her dad kind of like come around and be more supportive, especially in this episode. But I think there is something with her where like she wants to show him that it's all worth it. She kind of not wants to prove him wrong, but I think you kind of get where I'm saying with her attitude towards all this. And what I think all of these like tangled emotions that are like swirling about on this night bring to a service is like a little bit of additional chaos that maybe doesn't even need to be there. And you combine it with what so many restaurants do for Friends and Family night, where they say, we're going to do this as a dry run. We're going to make sure that the menu is as close to what opening night is going to be like. We're going to have all the people that we hired be here, all the ingredients that we normally would use, we're going to bring in and we're going to use it. And we're going to use it almost like a test run. And we're going to see like what breaks and what issues we run into. And no, it's going to be really helpful because the people that are eating, they're just friends and family. They will understand. And what happens on almost every single Friends and Family night? The people who are at the top, the leadership, the people who are there from day one, the people who are most involved in close proximity to the actual concept and the project, they're out in the dining room shaking hands and kissing babies all night long. And if they're not, then the friends and family are like, hey, where's Carmen? Where is he? We want to say congratulations. We want to say thank you. We want to say good job. Also, what else happens on Friends and Family night? When things go wrong, when shit hits the fan, when things aren't up to snuff, when you have to cut a dish, when an execution goes wrong, when something gets burnt and you have to redo it over again and people have to wait 25 minutes to get their next course. Because it's an artificial environment, you either don't get the feedback, period, because friends and family don't want to be the people who have to tell you, hey, this sucked and we need this to improve by the time that you guys open, or that execution just like gets painted over by a like, it was just friends and family, it's okay. And let's say that you figured it out. Let's say that you're firing on all cylinders that night, the team is super cohesive, nothing got screwed up, service goes awesome. what is going to happen with those people who came in for friends and family? They're probably not going to pay because Carmen or Kat or Richie or Fack, like they invited their people. It was an act of generosity. They said, please come out for friends and family. We would love to have you. And so what these guys are experiencing on the first night of them doing like a service is like going into the red. And all of that makes for like the most chaotic, like actual opening week when you have real people who are like, they've been on the wait list or they've like seen you guys on Instagram and they're so pumped for the first week of opening. And they're the ones that have to actually experience these broken processes and still janky execution pieces. And so to not just be a Debbie Downer, to actually provide a solution that I think might actually kill both birds with one stone, I would like to suggest keeping friends and family for the restaurant that's going to be opening. And you actually might decide that it is going to be a modified execution of some of our favorite dishes that we're so excited to serve when we do actually open. Yes, I still think friends and family should be a thing, but you notice the like 9-course menu that they were talking about. I think for friends and family, what do they want to see? They want to see the kitchen. They want to see everybody working. They want to see the dining room. They want to see the bathroom. They want to see the glassware you decided on because you were texting me about that last month. And oh my God, you guys picked out this wallpaper and look at this painting on the wall. And wow, look at this spice shelf. Look at the walk-in. And so you maybe decide that you're going to do 3 courses or 4 courses. Maybe they're even served family style. Maybe they're served inside of the kitchen. Obviously, this is restaurant dependent, but you kind of like morph the restaurant to kind of understand the clientele, the guests that are coming in. That's your friends and family. You do it kind of in a way in season 1 where we talked about the buyout coming in. You treat it almost like a buyout, like it's a pared down menu. It's a very easy execution. There's pre-prepped items all over the place. You give Carmen and the whole leadership team the ability to interact, and you can turn those friends and family that came to see you into evangelists. You want to tell them all the little details about why you decided to have the bear logo on the outside and how you decided to source the chairs and what ceramics you decided to use for this dish. You tell those funny stories of building the project where like, yeah, Carmen used to stand here and I used to stand here with a stopwatch and we used to time him to see how far it was going to take him to get between stations. And you say something super reasonable like, hey guys, it's $30 a person to come for friends and family. We just need it as a startup thing for us just to make sure that we can cover our costs. And then boom, friends and family is like a morale boosting success. Everybody feels good coming off of friends and family. And then what you want is you want to be very curative with either the guests who do come for that first opening week, or you want to significantly limit the number of guests that are coming in for opening week. And so let's say the Bear is a 50-seat restaurant and they might want to say, okay, we have 50 seats. We're going to actually reach out to all of the food bloggers. We're going to reach out to other chef homies. We're going to reach out to industry friends that we have that can come in and experience the restaurant, and we trust and honor their feedback. We want them to experience the menu. We want the team to be doing all the tasks and menu pieces and plating and service that they need to be doing, but we want to have trusted sources of feedback when we ask for, how was your experience? What should we do better? What would you change? That we actually have somebody that we trust on the other side of that. And you call this soft opening week. You say like, we're so excited for the actual grand opening day of this restaurant, but before then, we want to make sure that everything is just humming along. And again, you do exactly the same thing. You progressive overload. If friends and family was 3 or 4 courses, you up it to 5 or 7. And the beauty of that, in my mind, the reason I wish somebody would have done this when I was a part of friends and family services, is that it actually allows the kinks to get worked out in a sustainable way, in a manageable way, in a way that it feels like you can actually keep up and actually implement the changes that you need to make, versus like, oh my God, this was a complete disaster. We need to scrap that thing and we need to start this over and we need to rejig this and we need to take this from your station and move it over there. And the beauty of that week too is like, yeah, you can still also charge. Maybe it's like a 50% off on certain days that people come in, or maybe again, you're paring down the number of guests that are coming in. So if you could normally do 50 covers, just arbitrary number, you're saying we're only doing 20 guests a day. Again, this is one guy's opinion. I don't have a restaurant, so I'm going to probably get roasted for even just having this opinion in general. But it's like, when I do have a restaurant someday, I plan on implementing this at least strategy to make sure that friends and family and opening week is actually enjoyable for everybody instead of chaotic and full of emotion and stress and anxiety. I just, having been in this industry for like coming up on 15 years, I've seen friends and family happen enough times to enough chefs, and it just doesn't seem like an enjoyable process. And I would just like to see it switched in a way where people do actually get to enjoy this first night of this really special occasion on this thing that they work so hard to bring to life.
Next week we're full.
Yeah, and then?
And then, you know, not as full.
Okay, we die down, we die.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a wait list?
And I can already hear the keyboard warriors typing away saying, Justin, Pete, restaurants and chefs can't decide to do that soft opening strategy because like you just heard, the bear guys need to be making money in order to pay back this loan, blah, 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 blah. And in my mind, I'm like, guys, my strategy is trying to optimize for that too. I'm trying to make sure that people don't burn themselves out in their first week. I'm trying to make sure that morale stays high going into like month 1, not just week 1, and month 2 and month 4 and month 8. I'm trying to make sure I acknowledge the fact that like even in 2024, word of mouth is the most powerful marketing force in the world because of the fact that it's a trusted source of information and feedback. And if you can take the time to tell the story, to provide that extra attention to the guests that do join you for the first week, for the people that you curate maybe for that soft opening week, it will lead to increased sales just in the weeks and months to come after you actually open your doors. I guess the other reason I'm excited to see this scene is because in like post-pandemic world, in the restaurant scene, I think so many chefs are nervous to like talk about changing prices or increasing the amount that something costs. And it's because of the fact that like they don't think consumers know that they are experiencing increased cost or that labor is super expensive or like their lease on their building went up. And so to have shows like this talking about like the real numbers that people are experiencing as they're building a restaurant, I think just overall makes the entire, guest population more educated, especially for the ones that are really nerdy about this stuff. And so then they won't actually have so much sticker shock when they go and they sit down and the menu price is different than what they might have paid 2 years ago. Because at the end of the day, restaurants are businesses and they need to make sense. Get it?
You grow up Arizona, chef. Look, hey, hands please. Yes, chef. Whoa! Why is this on the left side? It should be on the right side because we're all right-handed. Butterfinger boy. Hey, that's my fault. Who the fuck put her on the left side?
Lots of details in this scene. You have the Brigard blue aprons just kind of like making a comeback as well as the kind of like dishwasher shirts. The kind of became a cultural phenomenon after the Bear season 1. Then you have Carmen making specific details like taking salt and seasoning from up high so you have a more even distribution on whatever you're seasoning. And then he also talks about the pans being like ergonomically placed on your station so that yes, it might actually look better or fit better in one area of your station, but you also need to think about the fact that like you're a human that's going to be interacting with this setup. And so you need to make it in a way where it's like if you're right-handed and it's a heavy cast iron pan, you have the ability to like reach for that in a way where like you're not reaching over open burners or like boiling pots of things. And so yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I teach that in my program as well. The detail I wanted to stop on, because I think that this is again another testament to like the culinary producers on this show, is like the folded towel underneath the pot of hot puree here. In a lot of high caliber kitchens, this is done for 2 reasons. And so if this is a pot that has just been on the stove and you've brought it up to a boil and it's ripping hot, you're not going to put this pot down on a cutting board, and especially not down on a stainless steel countertop, because that's going to warp the tabletop. Also, not just because of that, because if you take it away, that area of the countertop's still going to be hot and you don't want someone to touch their hand on that and get burned. So you'll use a trivet or a folded towel.
Number 1, Mom's honey bun.
That's nice, chef.
Thank you.
They haven't exactly made it clear if this is something that's going to be served like out of the window or if this is going to be something called a takeaway. A takeaway is often this thing like at the end of the tasting menu where like you've gotten your desserts, the check has already been handed, and on your way out of the restaurant, they're going to give you something to go home with. The takeaway accomplishes several things when done right. The first one is it just kind of expresses this over and above and beyond expression to detail where you're thinking about like, oh my God, you guys can do packaged stuff too. When everybody thinks of the restaurant more or less like it's fancy plated stuff or like fire or grilled or like you can only serve hot food, and it's like our morning bun that we can pack up that might have an air of nostalgia to it is also going to be banging. Secondly, especially for restaurants that are like at the highest of the high, remember we talked about Michelin being the like worth a journey at the 3 Michelin-star level. You have people who have traveled probably like for either from out of town or they're staying at a hotel for the night because they drove in from like the suburbs or they actually like flew across the country for this meal. My wife and I do that all the time. It's like our only hobby. And for people like that who are like going to be waking up in a hotel and you know that there's not going to be any breakfast for them, like how cool would it be to like have them wake up to one of our morning buns? Another really popular one like 11 Madison Park and a recent restaurant I ate at called Addison specializes in is giving you granola for the next morning. Again, it might sound kind of boring, but it's like granola and they put it in this glass jar and it's wrapped in a specific way and it has like branded ribbon on it with the restaurant's logo all over it. And again, when done right, if the takeaway is actually good and delicious and you want to eat it, it actually turns into like like increasing the size of the halo of the experience. Because think about it, you have all this anticipation and hype coming into the experience. That's like before you actually sit down at the table for the menu. And then actually after, they can increase that even further by saying, oh yeah, like they're still taking care of us here in the morning because we're actually enjoying stuff that they prepared for us. Not to mention the like obvious like marketing work that's done when, you know, you have the wrapper from this morning bun that's at home and your friend comes over for dinner the next night and they say, hey, what did you guys do last night? And it's like, oh, I heard you guys went to the Bear. And it's like, is that what that wrapper is? Again, in this day and age of like the word of mouth holding so much power, if you can take this morning bun to work the next day and you're going to tell the whole office about this amazing meal that you had at this restaurant last night called the Bear, it's like a super good idea from a marketing perspective of like getting more guests excited to come and enjoy your restaurant. Is it too early to shout out Marcus in this episode? Because the transformation that this guy experienced in this season is so cool to like see played out in this way, from just like belaboring the point and just like getting lost in the sauce of coming up with a new dish and R&D and overthinking it and like spending too much time in this insular way to like, hey, chefs, come over to the past. I have 3 fucking new dishes to show you, is so awesome. He's confident in his execution and his ability to kind of like stay within the constraints of the concept. He's talking in an elegant way about how he decided to do things. His technique is on point in the way that he's able to present something that's going to eat well and the proportions are right and the flavors are on. And he's all by himself on Pastry Station, just crushing it. You will see this oftentimes where like one dish from the tasting menu comes from the pastry section. To help out the entire kitchen, that's helpful.
Yeah, gee, thank you.
Especially when Marcus is probably involved with like making the tuile for those.
Health inspectors aren't coming today.
You sure about that?
Nope.
True.
In return, you know what you're gonna get? Nice sharp kick in your little nuts daily for the foreseeable future.
If you got to the end of that pep talk and you're even more excited to own a restaurant, then I want you to carry on. I mean, is there any dish that went more viral in 2023 than this one? And before she adds the signature potato chips to this one, I just want to talk about the whole process. And first, let's start with the fact that we saw her whisking the eggs and then passing them through a strainer. And what that does is that helps to make sure that you don't have any of those like gnarly bits from the whites that will ultimately interfere with the creation of the sheet of egg that you basically need to have on the bottom of the pan. You can also notice that when she added her butter to her nonstick pan on the stove, it did not kind of like either start smoking or any of it kind of like got brown or black a little bit too quickly. And so the butter, as much as it is for kind of like lubrication and non-stick qualities and just to kind of like add a little bit of that like toasted butter flavor to the whole cooking of the omelet, it actually works as kind of like a temperature gauge for where your pan is at and is it a good point or time to add your eggs to that pan. Once you've kind of like done the combination of like shaking your pan and stirring it with the spatula just gently, and you finally let everything kind of get soft and creamy, and then you let that sheet of egg set on the bottom. You saw Sydney do the signature move again of taking that piping bag and squeezing Boursin cheese into the middle of hers before she rolled it up. She added butter at a couple different times in this process, both at the end here to give that sheen as well as inside of the pan to give another little bit of a boost of flavor. You'll also see her taking a paper towel, most likely wet, and wrapping the bunch of chives here for 2 reasons. One, because when you compress the chives down together, it makes it easier for your knife to cut through it in a kind of consistent way. And secondly, you're aligning all of the chives in one direction. Because think about it, if you're holding the bunch of chives with your hand, and some of the chives, most of the chives maybe even, are facing perpendicular to your knife, and you're going to get those round coins as you go and you slice all the way through those chives, but you have a couple of those chives that are kind of like maybe going off at a 45-degree angle or a 12-degree angle or whatever. When you go and you slice through those are going to be angled pieces of chives, and then when you look at your container of chives that are supposed to be all the way around, everybody knows the Rate My Chives page on Instagram, you're going for a 10 out of 10 here, you will ultimately get to a place where like you have uneven chives as part of the bunch. And so she takes those chives that are cut so beautifully and she sprinkles them on, and then we add our sour cream and onion chips, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, cracked black pepper, and it's time to serve. I told you folks, you can't skip these videos either.
Make sense.
This was very good. This was very good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Everybody's got romance this season. It's wild.
Anticipation creates luxuriation. Yeah. Yeah. Fucking abra fucking cadabra, chefs. Cousin.
Yeah.
If you're a general manager, or you're the one that does the pre-service rah-rah pep talk meeting or the quote of the day, I'd love to get your rating on Richie's execution there down low in the comments.
We're gonna be doing a tasting menu. It's 9 courses. That's the best way to practice, okay? It's gonna be crazy. It's going to be overwhelming. That is the point. Do not get crazy. Do not get overwhelmed, all right? I want you guys to just try to focus.
I mean, I know I gave my thoughts on this whole evening and the format and what I don't like about it and what I propose as a solution, but like, am I wrong? Like hearing him say this sounds crazy, right?
And also we have a pistachio crush on that. So, you know, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me or Chef. But yeah, thank you.
Sounds good.
I so remember the first time I was in a management position and I went from like being the one who was just sitting in the dining room watching somebody else be the person to get up and speak during the menu meeting. And then Chef was like, hey, you gotta be the one to talk during the menu meeting. And I sounded like exactly like Sydney is, where you're like fumbling your words and you're talking a little bit too soft and you're not inspiring confidence. And yeah, it's a humbling experience. It takes time to get good at this. And it is absolutely an energy transference moment. She's been reading about Coach K for this entire season. This was her chance to deliver the like rah second half, you know, like let's go out and get him speech. And she's just this like timid, shy. This is just an example of like theory versus practice. You can watch the greats, you can, you know, read all the books and watch the TED Talks and listen to the podcasts. But until you get out there and you actually do it yourself, I mean, like listen to some of the first episodes of my podcast when I was like trying to talk about industry news. It's taken me years. I'm still learning to become a better public speaker. And so I wanted to pause here because I think that a lot of chefs can think of themselves as introverts or think of themselves as like, oh, well, I don't do the talking. I have a front of house person that does the talking. But it's like, it really does make a difference when you're the chef who is able to communicate your ideas. And so if you're early on in your journey and you have the opportunity to do more speaking and to do more talking about food, especially in a public setting like this with other team members, I couldn't be a bigger advocate for it because it's going to pay off later on in your career.
Sour cream and onion.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, the type with the ridges.
I bet that was fire.
Oh, it's fucking delicious.
That's good. Ah, that's good.
It was sour cream and onion chips. When Sydney says that like the best thing I did today was making an omelet for Nat, I totally feel that in my bones because I loved just being able to focus on making staff meal for everybody. The first sous chef position I ever had, and arguably maybe the best one, at least as I think back on it, was an AM sous chef position that I had where the only 2 jobs that I had was managing the apprentices that we had in the morning doing the prep with us, butchering, and then also making staff meal for everybody. And man, the epicness of those staff meals, because not only did I have time, I didn't have a station to prep that I had to worry about, and I was also in control of ordering. And so I had the ability, if I wanted a special product or if I wanted to use a different protein for that staff meal, I had the ability to order it. And so I was like taking care of the team from the sense of not just feeding them a dope meal every single day, but they loved it because they didn't have to worry about staff meal during their shift and they could come in later to start their day. It ultimately got to a point where like I was spending a little bit too much time on staff meal and chef wanted me to move from AM sous chef to like expediting sous chef in the PM. And so I ultimately started getting yelled at for the amount of time that I was spending on staff meal. But for the short time that it lasted, I really enjoyed that position and just the work that went into those types of days. It was just so enjoyable for me.
Like I just fuck up and fail.
I won't let you.
Friendly reminder that nobody has it all figured out.
You're not alone, Sid.
Neither are you.
Carmen's gift game this season, it's just on point. Now Sid's got the monogram. Let's go.
5 minutes to open, chef! Lights up! We're tasting everything again, okay, chefs? Yes, sir. Sure, please.
Pull butter from the shell, chef.
Yes, chef.
Behind. Open the
A couple details I wanted to call out in this scene that are absolutely accurate for like prepping for service just as things are about to open, or just kind of like the little subtle changes that happen between prep and going into service. And the first one is the outfit change that you're going to see amongst all the team members, where previously almost every single person that was prepping was wearing a blue apron, and going into service, everybody changes into the white apron. There's a shift that happens. And as far as the reasoning behind it, I guess you could argue that like you're usually messier, quote unquote, during prep than you are during service, but you can still, depending on the station you're working, get messy during service. If you're like manning a grill or you have oil splattering all over, or if you have sauces that you're whisking all night. I think it's more often because guests are actually going to be in the house and they're going to be touring the kitchen or looking into the open kitchen or looking into the window to see what the chefs are working on. And if you have all the chefs dressed in white, that sends a little bit of a different message than if there are colored aprons walking around. Secondly, you heard Tina's checklist as she was talking about all the things that are on her checklist and asking individual stations, are these things done? That's incredibly valuable if you're in a manager position and you have just like the things that every single day I want to check and make sure, is this portion? Do we have enough of this? Has this been seasoned? Has this been taken out? You heard Carmen talk about tempering steaks. That can be incredibly valuable for a night like tonight when you know exactly who's coming in. But also if you don't know who's coming in, if you're working a roast station, you'll often start the night with like a certain number of portions already tempering, because what you don't want is you don't want something to be ordered in right away and then all of a sudden you're pulling it directly from the fridge and you need to cook a steak to a specific temperature and you're like, oh my goodness, this is either going to take longer than expected or I'm not going to be able to get the quite same cook on it if it was tempered straight out of the fridge. And you'll often see this doing the rounds of tasting too, when like a manager will go around to individual stations and be asked to like, can I see all of your vinaigrettes? Can I see all of your sauces? Can you show me some of your vegetable cuts? And it's a last review because what you don't want is like when you go to pass up that component or that sauce or like it's ready to actually put on a plate and then the sous chef tastes it and then there's actually no time to fix the problem. You want at least at this point you have like maybe 20 minutes. I think the funniest part about this is like you're usually coming off of like this like lethargic feeling after eating staff meal and it's like this high adrenaline moment where like you need to turn it back on again and you actually need to prep yourself for service. It's an really interesting feeling and moment in a restaurant. Quick 10-second reminder that we are making the push for 100,000 subscribers here on this channel. And when I say the word subscribe, YouTube is probably already lighting up the subscribe button if you aren't already a subscriber to this channel. I have an absolute blast making these videos for free for you to watch, and I would love for you to either share the channel with a friend or if you aren't subscribed already, just to hit that button for us.